I hate the doctrine of eternal hellfire.
Okay.
I hate it because it slanders the Lord. I think it is one of the enemy's most manipulative tools to scare people into false salvation. So in the garden, God said, if you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will
die.
Paul said in Romans 5, the wages of sin is
Death.
when Jesus came to pay the penalty for sin, what happened to him on the cross?
He died.
It's always been about life and death, not heaven and hell. The Lord doesn't torture people. The ultimate penalty in the Bible has always been death.
Death, if it is about life and death. So what does this death look like? So when you said a beginning and an end, a age, so meaning eternal is not unending.
And in Revelation it says he destroys his last enemy, death.
True.
The only thing that can destroy death is resurrection life. Eventually, everybody is resurrected and everybody gets life.
You mean everybody?
Every human being that's ever been created.
So there is no separation at the end of the day of people, some that will be with the Lord, some that will be with, the devil or wherever. So what about this reference of this guy that was calling Father Abraham? The people reference that. So what do you say to that?
Lazarus and the rich man?
Yeah. At the end of the day, are you saying there is no consequence for how people live their life here on earth?
There's definitely consequences. You don't get to rule and reign with the Lord in the millennium.
So some people will now say that, well, at the end of the day, everybody will be saved. Is that similar to what you are saying?
Well, I'd use different terminology that everybody will be saved.
Yeah.
Because what we're saved from is death during the age. So what I will say is everybody will be given life. Eventually.
Everybody will be given life.
But what you're saved from is being in Hades during the millennium. That's what the salvation is from.
Huh. This is challenging.
One of my pet things that I like to share, and I share it because I'm deeply passionate about it. And I can get into why I'm deeply passionate about it. But I hate the doctrine of eternal hellfire.
Okay.
I hate it because it slanders the Lord. And I think it is one of the enemy's most manipulative tools to scare people into false salvation. So I'll just ask you a few questions since you're a man of the word.
Yeah.
And then you can ask me whatever questions you want to. So in the garden, God said, if you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will
die.
Paul said in Romans 5, the wages of sin is
death.
When Jesus came to pay the penalty for sin, what happened to him on the cross?
He died.
He died. It's always been about life and death, not heaven and hell.
Okay.
Hellfire is a false teaching. It comes from paganism. The Lord doesn't torture people. The ultimate penalty in the Bible has always been death. Always. There's no time where he tortured somebody. If he was hurting somebody, like with the flood, the ultimate penalty has always been death. And so anyway, ask a question.
So this is fascinating, maybe beyond fascinating too. I'm curious to know more about this. So what is this death? If you are saying that the teaching about the eternal damnation or hellfire is a doctrine of the devil, or it is not of God, so how do you explain the death if it is about life and death? So what does this death look like?
Okay. Well, to preface that, a couple of the things that trip people up is the word hell. The word hell is actually not in the Bible. In the Greek, it's 3 words: Hades, Gehenna, and Tartarus. None of which mean torture, none of which mean eternal anything. Hades is the abode of the dead, or the place of sleep. Gehenna was a literal burning trash heap outside of first century Jerusalem that they taught out of figurative language, that it's going to destroy, it's going to eat up, like burning dross from silver. It's purification, not torment. And it says that fire will burn eternally. Well, it's not burning now. So that fire burned for a period of time back in first century Jerusalem. But if you attach the word eternal to it, it can't mean eternal because it's not burning now, right? And then Tartarus is the place where the devil and the demons go. It's only used one time in the New Testament.
Okay.
The second word is eternal or forever. It does not mean for times without end. The word eternal comes from the Greek word aionios, shortened as aeon, which is the term where we get eon. So when you see eternal, it's not times without end. It's a period of time with a beginning and an end.
Okay, a period of time that has a beginning and that has an end.
Right. An age.
Okay.
The Lord works through ages.
Okay.
So we're about to come into the millennial age.
Okay.
That's a period of time with a beginning and an end.
Okay.
And just, on the word eternal, the Hebrew version of that is the word olam, O-L-A-M. And just to show you that it can't mean forever, in the story of Jonah, it says Jonah was in the belly of the whale, olam. Well, he wasn't there forever. He was there for a period of time with a beginning and end, 3 days and 3 nights. But that is the Hebrew equivalent of eternal.
So is that eternal also, is it also relevant to the eternal life?
Yeah, because eternal, if you get the right definition of eternal meaning age, then what he said was, I came to give you life in the age, in the millennial reign. That's the prize. If Paul says run so as to win the prize, that's the prize. To be alive with him in the age.
Okay. So when you said a beginning and an end, a age, so meaning eternal is not unending.
No. He works through ages.
Okay, but go ahead with your explanation. I'm following.
Okay. So now we're in the church age.
Okay.
The next age is the millennial reign. And the Bible doesn't talk about what's after that. But if it's all about life and death, and it's not about heaven and hell, and in Revelation it says he destroys his last enemy, death.
True.
The only thing that can destroy death is resurrection life. So eventually, all death will be overcome with his life. And that goes back to Acts 3, the restoration of all things. That's his eternal plan, or his plan through the ages, is to restore everything from death to life. Okay? So when Paul says, run so as to win the prize, and there's more ages to come, in Thessalonians it talks about there's 3 levels of humans. There's the unregenerate, there's carnal, and there's spiritual. So unregenerate people that have been born again. Carnal is people that have been born again, but they're living for this world and for their flesh and for their self. And then spiritual people are the ones that get to know the Lord and grow with him throughout their life. So there's going to be a resurrection when he returns, because we'll be caught up with him in the air, and then he'll come back and set up his kingdom on the earth. So that's the first resurrection.
Okay.
And the people that are resurrected then are the ones who were faithful in this life to die to themselves and live for the Lord, and they'll have the privilege of ruling and reigning with the Lord. The rapture is also a false doctrine, because that's when everybody else dies, just like the flood of Noah. Jesus said, when I return, it'll be like it was in the days of Noah. In the days of Noah, the wicked were removed and the righteous remained and inherited the earth. That's what's going to happen when he comes back. During the millennial reign, the Christians don't die, but it would be the unbelievers. And the Christians go through a training during that time to have another opportunity. Then there's the judgment seat of Christ after the 1,000 years, where all the Christians are raised. And then you remember the law of Jubilee in the Old Testament?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm guessing it's 50,000 years, but I don't know. That's just a guess. After 50,000 years, all the dead are raised, because he takes responsibility for all the debts himself. There's a teaching in the Old Testament where an ox falls into a pit on another man's land.
Yeah.
And that man, because he didn't fill the pit, was responsible for the ox. And that's the Lord telling us that I put the tree in the garden, and I'm responsible for everything that happens because of it. So he's the one that caused death, because he has a plan to give life to all. So eventually there's different ages with different resurrections, and then eventually everybody is resurrected and everybody gets life.
You mean everybody?
Every human being that's ever been created.
So there is no separation at the end of the day of people, some that will be with the Lord, some that will be with the devil or wherever.
They'll be in Hades. People that die will be in Hades, awaiting resurrection and judgment.
So but that's also an age, if I understand you clearly. And an end will come to that age as well, right?
Yeah.
When that phase end, that is when everybody will also they will also leave that, if I understand you clearly. So what I mean is that at the people that will be in Hades, will they live there at any point in time?
Yes.
When?
The mature Christians will be resurrected at the time of Jesus' return to rule and reign with him and disciple people on the earth.
Okay.
And then at the judgment seat, everybody's raised and judged again and either go back to Hades or are alive. And then after the Jubilee period, which I'm guessing is 50,000 years, then that's when everybody's raised and given life. So that's why it makes more sense to set, when Paul says, run so as to win the prize, discipline yourself like an athlete. If it's just heaven and hell and you pray the prayer and you get baptized, what's the incentive? What's the incentive?
Well, people will say that so that you can have a street of gold, a house with gold, things like that.
The prize is the millennial reign. That's the prize he's talking about.
Huh. Interesting.
And when you get a revelation of that, it's very motivating. Because if I'm, just going and sitting in a pew on Sundays and writing a tithe check, and I think I've got everything, I'm going to get my mansion just like everybody does. So I don't really have to live the Christian life. If I sit in the pew, listen to a sermon, and pay for the parking lot, then I've done everything that's my responsibility. But maybe you're playing golf 7 days a week and working, 12 hours a day just so you can have a lot of money in a big house, and you're not really serving anybody but yourself. Well, those are the ones that are going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Didn't I go to church? Didn't I preach the sermons? Didn't I do this? Didn't I do that? He's like, I never knew you.
So what about this reference of this guy that was in either hell or wherever now, that was calling Father Abraham? Yeah, the people reference that. So what do you say to that?
Lazarus and the rich man?
Yeah.
I believe that all the parables are about Jesus taking the kingdom from the Jews and giving it to his people. Because if you really think about it, if Lazarus, or if the rich man is burning alive in hell, literally burning. Picture yourself standing in a bonfire and your flesh is not quenched, but you're feeling all the heat and the flames on your physical body. Are you going to calmly go, will you just give me a drop of water? No. You're going to be screaming in absolute torment, unable to make a word. So that parable can't mean hell. It's a terrible example of what hell could be. The weeping and gnashing of teeth is when you think you've served the Lord all your life, and you find out that he's like, I never knew you. You were serving yourself the whole time.
So I want to make sure I understand your point of view here, that the teaching about heaven and hell is a wrong teaching. And that at the end of the day, it's all about ages.
Yeah.
And it's about growing. Life and death.
Yeah.
And what?
Growing.
And growing. So, yes. Strongly believe that, because at the beginning, it was the Garden of Eden. It was on earth that Adam was put in charge to multiply and to be fruitful, and that the Lord is coming back to the earth. Now, when it comes to these different ages, that there is an age that some people will be in Hades, and that an end will come to that age, and after that age everybody will have life.
It's in stages. So the mature ones get life.
Yes.
Whether it's when he returns and we're just because we're still alive, or he resurrects the faithful ones, and then in the next one there's another resurrection for the mature believers that have matured through the age.
Okay.
And then there's another resurrection for everybody. All the unbelievers, all the people whose debt was never paid. He pays their debt.
Interesting. Trevor, so what you're saying is that, well, because let me just speak out my thoughts here, that at the end of the day, are you saying there is no consequence for how people live their life here on earth?
There's definitely consequences. You don't get to rule and reign with the Lord in the millennium.
Well, that will come to an end, right?
Yeah.
At that age. So if somebody said, well, let me just live, do whatever I want, however I want it. I know that it's just for a temporary time.
Yeah, they can do that. And my only answer would be, well, you don't know him. Because if you know him and you really love him, you want that. You want to rule and reign on the millennium. You feel his heart. You feel his desire for his creation and the restoration of all things, and it motivates you to live for him instead of for yourself. So if you're so far in yourself and your flesh that you don't really care, you don't know him well enough to know how important it is to him, then fine, do that.
So one thing that I'm also curious about is that, because I've heard this before, that, since it is not left to us to save ourselves, that it is not left to us to choose death, that at the end of the day, God is responsible for us. So some people will now say that, well, at the end of the day, everybody will be saved. Is that similar to what you are saying?
Well, I'd use different terminology that everybody will be saved.
Yeah.
Because what we're saved from is death during the age.
Okay.
So what I will say is everybody will be given life eventually, at different stages and different ages.
Everybody will be given life.
But what you're saved from is being in Hades during the millennium. That's what the salvation is from.
Huh. This is challenging.
Well, I have it on my blog, not that I'm promoting.
I read a little bit of that. Well, definitely I will share that.
It's just a primer, what I put, just to provoke thought. And I've had a lot of people just with that first, like I questioned you about life and death. You can't refute that. You can't refute that the penalty is death.
Yes.
Now, you can take other scriptures that appear to mean torture and weave it into a doctrine, but you can't get away from death is the penalty. You can't get away from it. It's just that clear. But the best book I've ever read, and it's really not long reading, is a guy named Dr. Stephen Jones. It's on my website, or his is godskingdomministries.org. And he is the profoundest, deepest teacher I have ever read. And he has a booklet called The Restoration of All Things, and it explains every question ever asked about this. It's so good. You can read it in one sitting, probably.
I will check it out because I'm curious. Trust me.
Yeah.
I want to know more about this.
Yeah.
You see, two things that crossed my mind is, one is, for me, I believe that our belief are supposed to influence how we live our life.
Yeah.
If I believe that this chair, I can sit on this chair and I will not fall down, I will sit. But if I know that sitting on it will make me to fall down, but I am worried about belief systems or teachings that does not influence how I relate with my brothers and sisters, even with unbelievers, or I treat my wife or my children.
Yeah.
So how will this teaching that you just discussed briefly now influence how people live their life?
Well, it is the motivation to die to yourself to live for the Lord. So when you're tempted to be selfish, or you're tempted to slap your wife, or you're tempted to go rob a bank, or you're tempted to idolize your career, or you're tempted to get caught up in hobbies after hobbies after hobbies and neglect your responsibilities to your wife and your children, or anything like that, it's a motivator. No, I do want to rule and reign with him in the kingdom. I must die to those things so that I can fulfill my assignment here in the earth. And even taking that back to the church life and why it dies, you don't have to do that to have church life. You don't have to show up with something consistently. You don't have to go mine it out yourself in your Bible and prayer time, because it's being given to you. So the motivator is you want to rule and reign with him. Just like Paul says, you will buffet your body. You will do what the word says. You will die to yourself. You'll grow spiritually. You'll have a fruitful garden in your life somewhere that honors the Lord and pleases him. And you'll do it because you want that prize.
So there is no hell, there is no heaven. No, let me say that again. There is the teaching of people that don't believe in the Lord will go to hellfire is wrong.
It is wrong. It's not only wrong, it's satanic.
Wow. Not wrong, but satanic.
I mean, if you study history, the only people that tortured people alive were the pagans. The godless people, they would sacrifice their children for a good harvest. They would burn people alive. Of course, they would all end up dying, but that's not the same as the Lord's death, because there's a resurrection coming.
So, Trevor, see, this is one argument that I've heard, that people will say that because the Lord is loving, but he's also a judge as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, so people will say, oh, he's always loving. He will not, he will not be able to see people to suffer.
Yeah.
Therefore, people come up with this kind of teaching that say, well, you know, he doesn't do things like that because he's a loving father.
Right. Well, the last paragraph in my blog post about this says that it's not that there's not judgment.
Okay.
We need to understand the purpose, the nature, and the duration of the judgment. So the Lord's purpose for trials, tribulations, suffering, for judging, for correcting his children is growth, just like you correct your children for growth. You don't go home and somebody did something wrong and so you burn them with a hot iron. You don't do that. That doesn't advance your goal in their life, which is loving them and raising them, but you'll bring the judgment when they need it because you're dad. Well, he's dad too. And so if I'm off doing something wrong, he can bring the judgment, but it's to correct me, not torture me. He's raising sons and daughters. He's not raising fraidy cats that hide in the closet when dad comes home. Right? If you spare the rod, you hate your son. Well, he doesn't hate us. He doesn't spare the rod. But his are restorative. And even fire, all through the Bible, if you study all the fires, they're for refinement, not torture.
Many people are ignorant of this, and I'm asking myself that many churches or Christian gatherings have built on this teaching.
Yeah.
And people understanding this might also make some of these churches to be empty.
Yeah. That would be okay.
Interesting. You know, funny thing is that my first serious awareness of the Lord or of wanting to take God serious was about the teaching that scares me not to go to the fire. And so I said, wow. And also, you know, there was this movie that shows don't take the 666 figure, the marks of the end time or the enemy. And it just scares the heck out of me. I said, whoosh, yeah. I don't want to experience this. And of course, my walk with the Lord has moved away from a relationship based on fear to a relationship based on love. But that was the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, and for so many people, I believe it was like that for them. But you don't use fear to draw people to the Lord.
No. And it can create a lot of false conversions, because if somebody actually believes that, then they'll say, okay, baptize me. You know, I want to go burn alive forever. But that could be a false conversion because they were converting to a revelation of hell, not to a vision of Jesus Christ.
Interesting.
We need to be pulled towards him, not back into a corner, you know, and made to fear him as a way to get to know him. You know, you don't run to the Father that comes home and beats you with a whip. He wants us running to him, like the woman with the issue of blood and blind Bartimaeus. Well, if you believe there's a potential he's going to burn you alive forever, how much are you going to run to him, you know? And he wants us running to him as a lifestyle, all day, every day.
Wow.
So let me ask you this. If you were talking to somebody, they said, hey, you know, I heard that your wife, when your children misbehave, she takes them in a closet and she burns them with a hot iron. Your wife is evil. It's so ridiculous. You probably just laugh it off and go, you don't even know her. Yeah. I live with her every day. Yeah. You know, she would never come within 1,000,000 miles of that. Well, that's what I say to people that actually believe in hell. You don't know him. If you knew him well, you don't even have to be told that's not true. You just instinctively in your spirit, no, he's not doing that. And I've met several people who I can present what I've presented here, and it clicks immediately. And they're strong, walking Christians who are in tune with their spirit, man. They have good discernment. They just needed somebody to say it because they had just never heard it before. Yeah. But their spirit immediately, like, yes, thank God, praise the Lord. You just got bigger and better. You know, I still fear him. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And I know that chastisement can come at any time, and it's not pleasant. But it's not torture.
There's a thing that, you know, many believers are lazy to study. And because at times, you know, I fall into that category at times because my approach to some of these teaching about what happens after we die, I'm not in control of that. So I don't need to worry myself about that.
Yeah, again, I just come back to the motivation of winning the prize. I mean, the more you study it and the more you get a revelation of how badly he wants his sons, where there's different words for children. They like lumping all words into one word, but there's 2 or 3 words for children in the Bible. And one's huion and technos, and so it's child and son. And he's looking for sons.
Yes.
So he loves his children, but he wants them to grow into a son who co-labor with him and advance his kingdom because they know him. That's why he calls us ambassadors. He can send us wherever he wants, and we will represent him properly. But children, they don't get to come and run the family business. They've got to grow. So the trials and tribulations come from, or the manufacturing plant of faith and growth, and then if you really dig into the topic and you catch his heart on how bad he wants his sons ruling and reigning with him in the millennium, it'll govern you. Yeah. Well, and then you're motivated by vision instead of fear.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
Yeah.
This is quite an eye-opening and also challenging. So I'm definitely going to dig in more into this subject matter. Thank you so much.
You're welcome
for bringing it over. Yep.